Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, a review of the new AC/DC album, Power Up. Now, for the last two Fridays leading up to this, we covered Black Ice, and then last week we covered 2014's Rock or Bust. And here we are with the brand new album. My vinyl copy hasn't gotten here yet, but I've listened to it a whole bunch of times on Amazon HD, and I just wanted to make this review, so here we go. Now, before I did the review, I was thinking to myself, what are my realistic expectations for an AC/DC album in 2020? What are my realistic expectations for any of the bands that I grew up with, my favorite bands who have had long careers, like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, or Ozzy? I know that this album is not going to be better than Back in Black. I know that it's not going to be better than Let There Be Rock. But what I do expect is I expect some good songs, catchy choruses. I expect some cool riffs. I expect the rhythm section to have that AC/DC feel and swing to it. So does this album live up to those expectations? Yeah, I would say that it does. It is a good, really good AC/DC album for this point in their career. Again, if you're expecting Back in Black Part 2 or Highway to Hell, no, it's not going to be that. But for where they are at this point in their career, I think that this is a really good record. It's produced by Brendan O'Brien, who's produced the last two albums. And I think that the production is really good. I would say it's even a little bit better than Rock or Bust. And I like the production on Rock or Bust. It has a nice warm sound to it. The bass guitar really jumps out at me. The bass on this sounds great. Cliff Williams, this might be one of his best recorded bass sounds. I think, man, up there with like his nice warm sound that he had like on Back in Black, like during the Mutt Lange era. The bass sounds great on here. The drums, Phil Rudd, sound great. Angus and sadly Malcolm Young isn't with us anymore, so Stevie Young is here, and Angus and Stevie, their guitars sound great. The lead sounds, Angus's lead sounds are great, and Brian Johnson sounds really good. I mentioned in my last two videos, it's starting with Black Ice. I really feel like Brian's voice, something happened for the better. I don't know what, but his voice just to me sounded really good on Black Ice and Rock or Bust, and it continues along that same line here. So sonically, I would align this with Rock or Bust a little bit better than Rock or Bust. It doesn't suffer from some of the complaints I had on Black Ice, where it was Black Ice for me was kind of bright and overcompressed and a little too loud. This album for me doesn't have that. It's nice and warm. I really love the mix in general on this. The only complaint, one other complaint I might have, and this is kind of strange because I praised this in the Rock or Bust video, how I felt like Brendan O'Brien had kind of put his stamp on the AC/DC background vocals. There was a certain like style of background vocals during the Mutt Lange era, and then it seems like Brendan O'Brien has done something different with that. And so here, at times, I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if it's because they're pulled really far back, or it sounds like maybe they've been done something with the computer, like they sing the part one time, it's trimmed up with the computer, and then it's just cut and pasted a bunch of times. At times it just sounds artificial to me, which is strange because when you go back to classic AC/DC, their background vocals always had sort of this cool gang vocal feel to them, where it was always like a little bit loose and rough, like, little lava. The vocals, so one guy's cutting off a little earlier, hanging on to the note a little bit longer, or even like during the Mutt Lange era, Highway to Hell. It just sounded like they were all standing in a room around a microphone, beers in hand, just kind of shouting these things out. And on here, they just sound like they're, I don't know, computerized or something to me at times. And it sounded a little artificial. And as the album went on, I found it to be a little bit distracting because they're all very samey through a lot of these songs. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. You know, I don't know. In general, there's a lot of really things to really like about this album. So let's get into it. So it starts with Realize, which I liked. This has some, here we're talking about the background vocals. These background vocals really reminded me of like Thunderstruck. It's got this nice, you know, the guitars are playing the riff, and then when the bass and the drums come in, it is like, man, there's that classic AC/DC sound, which for me is the drums laying down a solid beat, Cliff on bass playing doo-doo-doo, a steady rhythm, and then the guitars playing like these syncopated riffs that have like some space inside them. You know, just classic AC/DC. When you hear that kick in, you're just like, man, they have a patent on this sound. They do it so well. Next, Rejection, which is one that, I don't know, this one I didn't like as much. I just think it's okay. It's got some interesting like background vocals that sound like they're like falsetto. If you know what falsetto is, like just sort of high-pitched style background vocals, which is kind of different for AC/DC. So Shot in the Dark, this was the lead-off single to the record, and I really liked this one. And when I first heard it, I thought it was okay, but the more I listened to it, I really liked it. It's got a great chorus, really catchy. It has this picked like Angus guitar line, boom, bam, bam, boom, bam, 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 bam. That he sort of does this. He started doing this, I think, like in the 80s and on. Like you hear it in like Shoot the Thrill and Put the Finger on You, and it's sort of become a little bit of a signature thing for him. So really cool, great chorus. Next, Through the Mists of Time. This is one that I really liked, and this one sits for me. I mentioned in Rock or Bust that I like this zone that AC/DC has gotten into in the later era of the Brian Johnson era, later part of the Brian Johnson era, where there's always seems to be at least one or two songs on the albums now that are just fun, really catchy, you know, melodic rock, like you would say Anything Goes from Black Ice, Rock the Blues Away from Rock or Bust. And this song sort of sits into that slot for me. Through the Mists of Time. Great song title too. And I should also mention that, thank goodness, the last like AC/DC records, it seemed like they so overused the word rock, especially on the Black Ice album. And to me, it just felt lazy. And I've mentioned that I'm not, you know, I think when Angus and Malcolm just took over the songwriting, the lyrics, that I just think the lyrics took kind of a step down, but I really like some of the lyrics on this album and the song titles. And it should be mentioned that these songs were stuff that Angus and Malcolm had worked on around Black Ice. So Through the Mists of Time, great song title, really melodic. I love there's a cool descending like chord progression in the chorus, which for me is it sounds different for AC/DC, which I thought was awesome. It's got a great bass part in it. Cliff Williams has a lot of great bass playing all over this record. Next, another one that I really liked, Kick You When You're Down. It's got a cool single note guitar lick, a really nice groove. It's got sort of this tribal beat in the chorus. It reminds me a little bit of like tribal beat on the drums, like what Phil Rudd played in Dirty Deeds, like that kind of like thing on his tom-toms, which is neat. Oh no, why do they kick you when you're down? Cool lyrics. Next, another one that I really liked, a personal kind of favorite on this, Witch's Spell. I love this song title. This is another thing I miss, like when AC/DC sort of had song titles like Hell's Bells and Evil Walks and these sort of more, maybe it's the metalhead in me or the 12-year-old metalhead in me that likes these kind of things. And so this has this, I love the song title, I love the lyrics in it. It's got, again, that sort of plucked Angus, Put the Finger on You kind of guitar thing going on at times. And it's got this really awesome like bass slide that, like at the beginning of the verses, they play like the riff and then Cliff just boo, like his bass slides down like that, and he does that a couple times through the song, which I think is really cool. I don't know if I've ever heard him do something like that before. So really catchy chorus, Caught in a Witch's Spell. It's got a nice Angus lead in it. I mentioned that the guitars sound great in here. Angus has a lot of nice, tasty leads. You know, his lead playing at this point, I mentioned this in the last two AC/DC videos, that he's not playing anything like, you know, like at the end, A Whole Lot of Rosie, where he's just going crazy and playing all this fast stuff. He doesn't really do that anymore. He's sort of settled into a nice bluesy pocket, the way he plays, the bending, and his immediately recognizable vibrato, just really tasty. And Witch's Spell, this guitar solo is jumped out at me. Demon Fire, this is a cool one. It starts off with like a hi-hat count in, which I thought was neat. Brian starts off in this sort of lower range of his voice, which is interesting. He goes back into the classic Brian Johnson vocals. It's got this neat descending guitar line, do 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 do. And what's cool is that the first so many times they play it, the bass is just playing a one note steady rhythm underneath it, do 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 do, and the guitar is boo 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 boo. But on the last time, Cliff doubles it with the bass, do 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 do. He plays the same line, and it's so cool. It's so creative because, to me, Cliff does all these subtle little things throughout his whole time with AC/DC, and this is a great example of that, where he's just playing steady, and then on the very last time, he doubles the guitar, and it just sets up beautifully the next section of the song. He is really great at doing that. And then the album, it sags for me a little bit at this point. There's a couple songs on here that, not that I think that they're bad, but they just feel okay. And this is something that has plagued AC/DC really for me, really since Flick of the Switch. If you go way back, one of the early videos I did was an In Defense of Flick of the Switch. And I said for me that was the last 10 out of 10 AC/DC record, because I just love every song on that album. And everything since then there always seems to be a handful of songs that are just like, okay, like 3 or 4 songs. And on Black Ice, I've said that there were too many songs. The album was too long. Rock or Bust was one of the shortest AC/DC studio albums. And this album, I don't know where it clocks in at. I think there's 11 or 12 songs. It doesn't feel particularly long, but there's a couple songs that are just like okay for me. And Wild Reputation is one of them. No Man's Land is another one. It's got some cool bluesy riffs in it. Money Shot is another one that they're just kind of okay. Systems Down is one that I really liked. It's got kind of a nasty groove to it. Something, again, that I miss from AC/DC. I miss when they used to do these kind of like She's Got Balls, nasty groovers. And Systems Down has some of that to it for me. And the album ends with Code Red, another one that I really liked, that starts off with this Back in Black. The main riff kind of has a little bit of a start-stop Back in Black feel to it. Then there's this low string riff that they play. The background vocals in this are pretty cool. Station to Station, Code Red. So all in all, when I really added up, there was really only 3-4 songs on here that I just thought were okay. Again, at this point for AC/DC, it seems like they just can't, get back to that top to bottom great albums like Highway to Hell or Flick of the Switch for me, or certainly Back in Black. But overall, there's some songs on here that I really, really like. So when I put it all together, I think that it's a really good AC/DC record. I would even say that I like this better than Rock or Bust. Do I like it better than Black Ice? I know on my Rock or Bust video I said that I liked Rock or Bust better than Black Ice, but then after I made the video, I kind of sat down and thought, I don't know if that's true if I added all the songs up. So I certainly like the production on this better than Black Ice, and I don't know, I might like this better than Black Ice. It might be sort of on par with that. So at this point in AC/DC's career, it's a good, solid AC/DC album. So there you go. It's here. Power Up. The cover looks pretty cool. I haven't got my vinyl record yet. I like the title of the album. I think it's sort of cool. I don't know why. It reminds me of Powerage. I guess the power in the title. So AC/DC is back, and hey, it's cool with me, man. With the way 2020's been going, the AC/DC, a good AC/DC album lifts my spirits. So Let me know what you think of this album in the comments. What do you like or don't like about it? Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.